we are gathered here today to move with and into and inside of and occupy and have her move with and into and inside of and occupy ourselves, us, and that is Our Lady of Guadalupe. My current venture with Our Lady of Guadalupe started in September this year. So this year, I'm going to clarify, this year is 2019. This is the year of the Hanged Man, and the Hanged Man is in Hebrew M-E-M, mem, which means primal water. I talked about the Hanged Man at the beginning of 2019 and what the year was about, but it's always larger than we can encompass or imagine in the beginning. So one of the major things I did not talk about with the Hanged Man was the power of flow with primal water. Water is going to be still unless it is moved by other elements. If it's moved by fire, if it's moved by wind, if it's moved by gravitation, something like that, it'll flow. And now what we see movement, we see flow, we see primal water moving all over the planet in many ways. And the way that I want to focus on right now, because this is how Our Lady came to me and came into my consciousness just recently, is through migrational flow. And she is very specifically involved in migrational flow. So I'm going to back up to September and tell you something that happened which has rocked my world right now. I haven't figured out how to grab onto it. What I want to do is I want to write about it, but I'm very troubled right now. I don't know how to write about it. I do feel that the only way, I came here, I'm on this planet. It's taken me a long time to realize that writing is the best toolbox for me on this planet. I learn by writing. I'm able to put in my 2 cents worth by writing, but I can't. That doesn't mean I always have the content. It takes a while, to be able to understand. So that's the backdrop. Okay, so I was in Denver, and there again, annual Vision Quest in September, and I was at my dad's house, and where the news is on TV from 5 o'clock until 10:30 every day. One of the stories that came up was my heart's pounding, was the story of the Canada Geese. How many people in this room have heard about what's going on with the Canada Geese? Raise your hand. Okay.
I heard about it from you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the story of the Canada Geese is very disturbing to me. And so here's the story. And I don't know all about it, but I know a little about it. And it was the Canada Geese who awakened in my consciousness. Our Lady of Guadalupe reawakened big time. Okay, so what's going on with the Canada Geese is there was a time when their population was very low and people were worried about them. And then the population began to increase. Okay, they migrate every year. They go from, Mexico to Canada and back. And by the way, and I'll explain this in a minute, they fly over the wall, right? So, okay, so there are the geese. They have begun to occupy the city parks, and right now I'm going to focus on Denver for a second. So they've begun to occupy the city parks. Their populations are increasing. So now I'm going to this is like a Google Zoom. I'm going to zoom right in to Washington Park, which was where I grew up. And it's right in the middle of the city of Denver. And my mom grew up on the street, right across the street from Washington Park. And my dad grew up in the neighborhood, which they didn't call it this when I was little, but now they do. They call it the Washington Park area, So he grew up there. My grandmother, his mother, who was the closest person to me and the person who loved me the most in my life, she lived in the neighborhood right where he grew up. Okay, so now they grew up in the park. The park's right across the street from a high school. All the kids hung out in the park. Okay, now the Canada Geese have settled in the park. So they're in the park. So they're pooping in the park. Okay, and they're creating a lot of people don't want to walk in the park because there's goose poop in the park, literally. Okay, so it turns out they're in other parks as well. This I did not know, so I began to research it. They're not just landing in Washington Park, they're also landing in City Park, and they're landing in other parks, turns out all across the United States, from Pennsylvania, major goose presence, all the way through across the United States and into Oregon. So the geese are enjoying the parks that are created for the use of humans. They're nice areas, the parks. They've got nice green grass and such in the summertime, and they are constructed, well, in my mind, now I will open a door. In my mind, the public parks are sanctuaries and were created as sanctuaries for people. They're havens. And the geese are flying into the havens and they're having babies. So, how do the humans respond to the geese? Okay, they don't like the geese. They don't like them in the parks. So, this is becoming an issue. You'll hear about it in the last couple of years, but it's an issue that's kind of exponentially growing as people are saying, we really don't like these geese in the park. We really don't like these geese in the park. What are we going to do about it? Somebody invented it's called a gooseinator, which is a robot that you can run, like one of those little remote control car things. You can run it across the ground and they jump up and they'll fly away, but they come back. Okay, so that didn't work. Therefore, the next step is they invented a gas chamber for the geese. The gas chamber, humans invented a gas chamber for the geese. The way the gas chamber works is you lure the mother into the gas chamber and all of the babies come following after. You get all the mother and all the babies in the gas chamber and you gas the geese. So they were gassing the geese when I was there. Thousands of geese. They said, well, we can gas the geese. That's one option. Or we can open hunting season on the geese for the homeless. And they can come in and they can kill the geese and they can eat. Okay? So that's another option that's on the table. But in the meantime, all these different cities are ordering gas chambers for the geese. So we're going to get them out of our parks. We're going to gas them. So this is where my story began. I was so upset with this, and then I started researching it and found out it was going on all over. I thought, how could this even be? City councils are meeting on this, but to me, this is unconscionable. So now I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. I find this unconscionable that humans would be gassing. Why don't they invent a goose poop cleaner that turns it into fertilizer, or something like that? I mean, if you're going to invent stuff, why do we invent a gas chamber? Okay, so we've got models of this in our past, right? So I hate to open this on such a story, but I was really, really upset. And I got in touch with an activist and a professor, animal rights activist, Mark Beckoff. He's in Boulder, and Boulder, they're not gassing the geese in Boulder. The geese are in the parks, but Boulder is much more aware town. That's where I went to school, and it's much more aware, and they're not gassing the geese. Okay, so then I was so troubled, so I started researching. So that's in September. Then in October, okay, what was really bothering me was, now I think you guys can follow this. I'm glad you asked me, Merritt, how long I talk, because now I'm in a story that I wasn't even planning to talk about, but it's the groundwork. Because then in October, I went to visit my brother. Okay, for me, the geese, the wall was already on my mind as the biggest issue on my mind. And then I was excited about the migration and the geese flying over the wall and the sandhill cranes and many of the songbirds, they're able to fly over the wall. And so that became like an image for me, a symbol of these birds flying over the wall. But the people couldn't fly over the wall, right? But the birds can fly over the wall. So this is good. But what if you've got the birds flying over the wall on this long migration? They land in the parks and then they're gassed in a gas chamber. So I saw that, you see what I mean, as symbolic of the way we are thinking. Like, WTF is wrong with us as humans? What are we thinking? So then I went to, my brother lives in southern New Mexico, so I went to visit him in Arizona. Shortly after that, Arizona and New Mexico. He picked me up in Tucson, and we went to the wall because the wall was on my mind. So we went to the wall in 3 different cities. So this is where I wanted to experience the energy at the wall. And we went to Mexico. We went across. We went into Mexico, and my blood feels like it's hot, like I'm boiling right now. Okay, so then what happened? So we're in these towns. We're in these places. Where does my consciousness go? Flood of energy going to Our Lady of Guadalupe. You see, she's everywhere. She was everywhere. She was on doors. She's on the side of buildings. She's in grottos. She's everywhere on both sides of the wall. So now my consciousness is sailing into the Empress, and I'll have to come back to that, like the Empress in Tarot, the Priestess in Tarot, but the Empress in Tarot, and they call Our Lady of Guadalupe the Empress of the Americas. Okay, now the Empress in Hebrew, just like the Hangman in 2019 is the year of Hangman, just like the Hangman is Mem in Hebrew, primal water, the Empress in Hebrew is Dalet, and that means door. The door. She is the door. She is the ingress. She is the inflow. She is the outflow. She is the magic that creates the new, all that is born into the world. So that is a tale of, in a certain sense, the divine feminine. And if we look at on the tree of life, the diagram of the tree of life, for those of you who are studying Tarot and know about that and know about the tree of life, and those of you who are in Terra Nova, the High Priestess and the Empress intersect. They cross at an intersection, and the Priestess would be the purveyor of the wisdom. The Empress is the door. Right at the crossroads where they cross on the tree of life is the door and the ingress and the outflow between worlds. So it's like between worlds. So I'm starting to get this vision and the image now of how do we open the door. So that's where it all began. So then I had to go back into my own history with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and now I'm just coming up to where I actually had wanted to begin. So Guadalupe, there she was, Our Lady of Guadalupe on both sides of the wall, drawing me. And this wall, we need to understand, divides an ecosystem.
Yes.
This wall, okay, this whole land here, Mexico going down to South America, then up into Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, and the states just above, which would be, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, and, so these states, this was all part of a common culture. And that whole common culture eventually would become Spain, right? And it would become Mexico and the United States, but first it was Spain. It got taken over and became Spain. And the image, the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe turned out to be the core, the central symbol that enabled the Spanish colonial empire on this continent. Okay, and so I'm going to come back to that in a second. So, but it was all one. It was one culture. It was one flow, one migrational flow. There were big centers at Mesa Verde in Colorado, at Chaco Canyon, these huge metropolitan, I don't know if you can use that word, but there were cities. They were big cities, with there were hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, and then now usually the term that's used now is like the Aztec world, but I'm not sure that's completely correct, but it's a term that is used. Okay, so Mexico City, the area of Mexico City was also a gigantic area with lots of people, and basically the Spaniards, when they came, they referred to that as Aztec. So when I learned about it in school, I went to school in Mexico. When I learned about it in school, I learned about it as basically the Toltec. The Toltec Empire. So there's the Toltecs, the Aztecs, the Mayans. There are different language groups. In the Toltec group, the language is Nahuatl. Okay, so I'll come back to that. I'm really elaborating on this. I'm going to try to see if I can squish it down more. So, but I just want to say that the wall divides an ecosystem. I said that before, and there's a natural flow. And the flow went between Mexico City-ish, there was no Mexico City, but, that area up to Chaco Canyon, and there were roads going back and forth, and this is going back for maybe millennia, right? And even from here to Chaco. And the reason I'm saying that is because the abalone, a lot of the abalone and stuff that was found at Chaco is like red abalone. That's right here, on the beach. Okay, so this natural flow, it's a flow of humans. It's a flow of birds, it's a flow of animals, it's a continual flow of migrational patterns. And a lot of it is about trade and society, and all of that. And a lot of it's also about food. For example, the quote Aztecs, I'm saying quote Aztecs because that was what the term that the Spaniards were using when they looked at that culture, and now we're talking about we're about 1500-ish year 1500. So they're calling it the Aztec world, full of gold, full of precious stones, full of emeralds, and all of this and. I just lost my train of thought.
This road, the wall.
The road, the wall, the Aztec. Oh, I know what it was. It's the migrational patterns. Because in the codices, like the stories of where do we come from, like what's our cosmology, where do we come from, how do we get here? So the quote Aztecs, in their temples, they had massive pyramids. Teotihuacan and all of the big sites. And there were temples, and inside the temples were histories. And in the codices, they said, most of it was oral. It was mostly oral, but there was some written. They didn't write like we write. They wrote on. Oh my gosh, you guys! I'm really digressing. They wrote on these big like square things that could be viewed from every angle, which just gives me an example. Gives me this little flash of Tibetan monks, how they make a sand painting and you can view it from any angle, something like that. It's not written like from left to right in rows like that. It's something different, and it tells the migrational patterns and stories. So the idea was they came, in their migrational stories, they came from the north, okay? This is me. For me, this probably means Mesa Verde, which this is my old stomping grounds from when I was a kid, right? And Chaco Canyon and these areas where there were these huge centers, and then they went south. Okay, why did they go south? Probably drought. They're following the food. It's a migrational pattern, right? So they vacate some of these areas that, no one knows why, but drought is
Big one.
Is what?
Big.
Yeah, drought. Because people have to move, and we're experiencing this now with global warming, right? So this is all up. Okay, you guys, I'm pretty excited. Let me see if I can calm down and get to Juan Diego, because that's where I really want to go right now is Juan Diego. Okay. The Earth plane is a planet of choice. And I know that, when we come here to this plane, this Earth, we're coming to a place of a lot of duality, and, we're making choices all the time. And I know that I am here I came in to quote, and I'm quoting my own mission, to affect the philosophy and values of the Earth world. And my core and key value is love and receptivity. And everything I am working with is about that, and how you operationalize love into compassion, into receptivity, into welcoming the stranger. This whole altar right in front of me is set up to welcome the stranger. I'm not going to go into that right now, but this is the standard classic altar for welcoming the stranger. Okay, so what does this mean? So, okay, here's where Our Lady of Guadalupe enters, because those are her values as stated by her. Love, compassion, the operationalization of love. And this time around, when I encountered Our Lady so deeply, all I kept hearing was, send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses longing to be free. That's what I kept hearing over and over and over. The quest for freedom, the quest for liberation, the quest to move through the wall. Because I know a lot of people, okay, don't get too sidetracked here, Pamela, I'm talking to myself, but I talk to so many people along the wall, and one of the things that they're afraid of course, is they're afraid, especially people living out in the desert, that they're going to get robbed. Because the people coming that get through are sometimes desperate. They're going to get robbed. Their houses are going to get broken into. They're afraid of the drugs, and in fact, they've got all the drug-smelling dogs, all along the wall. The Border Patrol is everywhere. There are more Border Patrol cars than there are regular cars, and I'm talking about 50 miles north of the wall. It is crawling with Border Patrol. This is where our tax money is going. Okay, it's just unbelievable to me. Okay, now I'll see if I can. So that's the backdrop. Okay, now we're going to cut back to the year 1531. Okay, so first, here's a tiny bit more background. Cortez came in 1520, or a little bit before that, 1515. I'm not sure what the exact year was when Cortez first started, but he was given the permission to take over Mexico by force, take over the area by force. And they were well prepared to take over the area by force. And so that's what they did. So the best way to take over a culture would be to destroy their sacred codices. That would be, their sacred writings, their sacred temples. It's the quickest way to handle it. And so they did that. Plus they had, gigantic wars where they killed, tens of thousands of people as well. Okay, in huge battles. And then for example, in the town that I lived in, which was Cholula, which has the biggest base pyramid in the world, in Cholula. There are two different stories about it. There's always more than one story too when you look into it, especially with Our Lady of Guadalupe. You've got a lot of different versions of what happened. There's an official version of what happened though, but people talk and they pass down different stories. Okay, so the story that I heard in Cholula about the pyramid, so nobody even remembered there was a pyramid there, the biggest pyramid, biggest base in the whole entire world, because that pyramid had been covered up by dirt. So how did they cover up the pyramid? So this is another aside. Really pretty unknown. They said, oh, the wind blew and blew. Okay, the story I heard in the town from the people who had been there, forever, they said that the Spaniards covered it up. They buried it. They actually buried it. And then they built a church on top of it. These are big pyramids. So they built a church on top. I'm not going to talk about that church right now, but I want to tell you that church, that's part of the chain of miracles under the guise of the Catholic Church. You walk in, I'll just say this, you walk into that church. In fact, it's called La Iglesia de los Remedios, which means the church of healing, remedies, the church of remedies, that's what it's called. So, but I'm sure remedies translates as a much bigger concept. So you walk into the church, there are black braids and ponytails and all over the walls, and or one section that I remember, because I was shocked, I'd never seen this before, right? So when I was at an impressionable age, I also encountered Our Lady of Guadalupe at a very impressionable age. So, because I was on my own, I was living there, I was in university, I was 18 when I got there and looking for something and just unknown, it's unknown. I'm studying anthropology, I'm studying these battles of Cortez. The biggest battle that Cortez had was in the town where I was living. A few feet out my front door, like in where the plaza is or the Zocalo. And so all of this stuff hit me because I could hear them. I could hear this happening. I can hear my anthropology teacher talking about Tonantzin, and I'll get to her in a second. And behold, the woman, she is a great warrior. This is from the ancient codices. Behold, the woman, she is a great warrior. She has captured a soul. That means she's pregnant. That was not mild and meek. Okay, so I've got all these echoes from these ancient codices in my mind. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Juan Diego. So here's how Our Lady of Guadalupe comes in to this already very long story. Okay, so Juan Diego, this is 10 years after, 1 decade after Cortez decimated southern Mexico, that whole area. Juan Diego is now, he's been baptized by the church, but they don't have too many, what would the word be, like baptists. He's only one of them, but there aren't that many. But his uncle, Juan Bernardino, turns out to be a powerful guy in the area. And now I'll digress for one more moment, because I'm not telling the story anything like the order I had planned to tell it in. So I'm going to digress again, and I'm going to say something about the role of uncles, the role of women, and the role of nephews. So in Pueblo culture, and presumably that's where they came from, Pueblo culture. Now, I'm making this up because I do not know. No one knows. But if the migrational pattern came from the north, and the Pueblos and the whole Pueblo and cliff dwellings, okay, so in Pueblo culture, the Pueblo culture is primarily secret And there's a really strong reason for that. And that's because the Pueblo culture wasn't decimated until after the culture in southern Mexico was decimated. Then they started moving up north with this power of decimation. And but they already knew. I mean, these people were in communication, so they already knew. So they kept their culture secret. They did not, and which that wasn't the case, because when Cortez came, first they welcomed him. They welcomed these people when they came, not realizing what was going to happen. Okay, so in the Pueblo culture. And this, I will tell you, I'm a little worried here, like I shouldn't say this. I don't know if I should or shouldn't, but I kind of want to tell you because of the story, because it fits in the story. So at Acoma Pueblo, which I was just at Acoma in October, in the Acoma culture, because you can't say that something is true everywhere, because there is what has been called the Pueblo Iron Curtain, which means we do not tell our secrets. And so those secrets in the kivas and such, they're going to be kept really, really quiet. And if you learn whatever you learn, even from each other. So like say if you have the Eagle Kiva, the Eagle clan, and you have the Badger clan, they're not necessarily going to share all their secrets with each other, even in the same pueblo or whatever. Okay, so but at Acoma, this is the way it worked. Okay, and I apologize if I'm overstepping something here, a bound. The women own all the property, so the women own the all the houses, and that's their domain. And so the women are responsible for the welcoming, the receiving, and the providing the lodging and the shelter for everyone. There's no one who is homeless. Anyone who shows up is given a home. And that's the way it is. The men maintain the homes. So the men do the work around maintaining the homes, and the uncles are the key people for maintaining the homes. And but there's going to be a matriarch who owns this home, like this part of the pueblo. And the matriarch, so she's going to be an old lady usually, well, she's not always an old lady, but she's going to be owning that, and the men, all the uncles, that would be her sons. They will be taking care of it. And if a lady shows up, a stranger, the lady is given a home. Because that's what women do. They manage the home. So the lady is given a home, and then that becomes her home to manage. And the men will help her manage it. Okay, now this is me talking, so I'm going to try to differentiate some of the stuff I've come up with from what is passed down. If a lady shows up and makes an appearance, now if the people came from the north and this was part of their culture, still the lady would be given a home, because that's what you do. And the uncles are going to manage it, and the nephews, they are going to make sure that home stays intact. Okay, so now cutting back to Our Lady of Guadalupe. So Juan Diego was the one who had the image. His name was Juan Diego, had the apparition. I mean, she showed up for him. His uncle, Juan Bernardino, was he was very prominent, a very prominent person, and already was working with the Spaniards 10 years after Cortez. So after he decimated, so they're trying to do something. So that there are a couple different stories about what happened. But now I want to go into the apparitions. So here's what happened with the apparitions. So Juan has already been baptized. He is now 57 years old. He was born in 1474, so he witnessed all of this stuff happening. And he wanted peace, and he's trying to work with the Franciscans, the Spaniards who had come to try to convert people, and he's trying to work with them. So, and he became baptized. So now this is the area of Mexico City. The day is Saturday, December 9th, 1531. Also, I'll point out too at this juncture that was winter solstice because the calendar was different. So December 12th, this was winter solstice, 1531. The calendars weren't as accurate as they are right now. Okay. Juan Diego, that was his Christianized name. But his Nahuatl name, remember I said the Toltecs, they spoke Nahuatl, and his Nahuatl name was Cuautlacoatzin, which means eagle that speaks. So he left his name, eagle that speaks, and the eagle is very prominent in terms of the symbology in that area. In fact, the eagle is the symbol of Mexico, you know. So is Our Lady of Guadalupe, by the way, symbol of Mexico. But the eagle is, you know, very prominent. Okay, so he was baptized. He'd been baptized in 1524, 10 years after. Oh, so this is 10 years after Cortez has laid waste to Tenochtitlan and its main temple, the Great Temple. And that was 1514 when Cortez, if I got these years wrong, it was 1514 when Cortez decimated the Great Temple at Tenochtitlan. That was the center of the area. And he decimated the site of Cholula, where I lived, in 1519. Well, in the first apparition, what happened was now Juan Diego, so he's got a new name, is walking to Mass, and it was a really long walk. He had to walk miles and miles to go to Mass, which he did, and then he had to walk miles home. So he is passing Tepeyac Hill. Okay, Tepeyac Hill was a site that was sacred to the worship of the goddess Tonantzin. And Cholula, where I lived, also was a city that was sacred to Tonantzin. It's not too far apart, you know, they're not too far apart. So there was a shrine to Tonantzin at Tepeyac Hill where Juan Diego was, and the shrine was already a pilgrimage site for untold years, maybe millennia. Tonantzin was a major goddess. Now she is, her imagery is mixed up with another goddess who's also major, called Coatlicue. Okay, so I want to put that out there. So here's the first apparition. Yeah, so what the Spaniards did is they destroyed the shrine to Tonantzin, you know, completely leveled it. But they didn't level the hill, so the hill's still there. So Juan Diego is now passing the hill, and he all of a sudden hears, like, it sounds like bird song, like a chorus of birds. But for him, it was the most beautiful music he had ever heard in his entire life. Nothing like it, nothing comparable. And all of a sudden, this apparition appeared before him. This apparition of the goddess. And she was the most beautiful. There was nothing that can be compared to that. He had nothing to compare this to. It was so magnificent. And by the way, this first apparition, in case I got my dates wrong here, I have it down here. The apparition was 17 years after the destruction. not 10. It was 17 years after the destruction. So Cortez had been there for 20 years. So this is 17 years after the shrine of Tonantzin had been destroyed. Okay, and the bishop, Zumárraga had already in the destruction had destroyed or caused to be destroyed 20,000 idols and all of the materials from the Great Temple. They had burned countless native codices. Everything from Tenochtitlan was destroyed. Okay, so here's Juan Diego. He doesn't know if this is his imagination. He doesn't know if it's the light, the lighting. Okay, one of my favorite words that I hardly ever use, but the word is preternatural. It has to do with colors. And preternatural colors are like psychedelic colors. They're beyond our normal imagination. And sometimes in certain fog or certain sun, you can see these preternatural colors and it'll just catch your eye, and it's so incredible. So they didn't use this word, I'm just using this word. But so Juan Diego suddenly saw all these preternatural colors. And this woman, this music beyond all words, filling the air, he has this sense of ravishing sweetness. He becomes intoxicated and he's hearing this blissful sound coming down the hill, and it's like reminds me of a cartoon, something from my childhood, like where you're like and you have to follow the flow, the energy flow. So Juan Diego's following the energy flow, and this woman just suddenly appears to his amazement. And now I am quoting a book about Guadalupe I'll share with you soon. To his amazement, he saw a glowing white cloud emblazoned by a brilliant rainbow formed by rays of dazzling light streaming from the cloud. All at once, the thrilling melody ceased without the trace of an echo. Then he heard someone calling to him from the misty summit. A woman's voice, gentle and insistent, that seemed to go straight through him like a golden spear. Juanito, Juanito, Dieguito, Juanito, Dieguito. So she's calling him in the diminutive, like Johnny, little Johnny, come, like my child, come. She was calling him affectionately, with this enormous affection. And he followed the sound and he ascended the hill and suddenly found himself standing before this woman, this beautiful woman, young woman. She was a young woman, 14, young woman, pregnant, berobed in this glorious raiment. Okay. Her garments shone like the sun, and the radiance of her person suffused the surrounding rocks, mesquite bushes, prickly pears, and other scrubby plants growing nearby, spangling them with a riot of color as if they were being viewed through stained glass windows. There she was, shining like the sun. She stood upon stones that seemed to send forth beams of light like precious jade and other jewels, and the earth seemed to shine with the brilliance of a rainbow, and the foliage had that brightness of turquoise and quetzal feathers. I have placed quetzal feathers over there on the altar so you can see exactly what the color is, and it is amazing. He tries to describe this indescribable mystery but can't even describe it to himself. But he just knows this is it. This is it. This is the land of flowers. This is the land of corn. This must be heaven. This is what they're talking about. This is heaven. The flowers and the corn were the key symbols. for the culture. Flowers plus song. This will be my equation now. Tell you when I'm throwing in my stuff. Flowers plus song for the culture equal truth. When you have flowers and you have song, you have indisputable truth. Now she speaks to him. Now here we're going into a translation. She spoke to him in Nahuatl. That's the language of Tonantzin. And that's his childhood language. So she's speaking in Nahuatl. And so now here's the translation that comes out later. Know for certain that I am the perfect and perpetual Virgin Mary, Mother of the true God. Here I will show and offer all my love. This is the official version, by the way, the official version of the church. Here I will show and offer all my love, my compassion, my help, and my protection to the people. I am your merciful mother, the mother of all who love me, of those who cry to me, of those who have confidence in me. Here, on this hill, I will hear their weeping and their sorrows, their necessities and misfortunes. Listen and let it penetrate your heart. Do not be troubled or weighed down with grief. Do not fear any illness or vexation, anxiety or pain. Am I not here who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not your fountain of life? Are you not in the folds of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Is there anything else you need? Okay, so this is the site of the shrine of Tonantzin, and now here is Guadalupe, and she says, here's what I need you to do, Juanito, beloved Juanito. I need you to make me a house. See? The woman shows up and she said, I need my house. Okay, so this is me again, knowing the Pueblo culture. Juanito says, wow. He says, yeah, I'm like your child. I'm also like your nephew. And my uncle, he's got some power around here. Maybe, but I don't have any power. He's thinking this to himself. I'm making this up. But she says, I need Teo Kali. I believe it's pronounced, but I don't know because that's Nahuatl. But the way it's spelled is Teocalli, and it means small shrine. Like I need a small shrine. Keep in mind, this is a pilgrimage site that probably goes back, who knows, could be thousands of years. And she tells him to go to the bishop, Zumaraga, and tell him that they've had this little discussion, and she needs a house here, and that she will be there to, handle whatever needs to be handled there. And she tells him, just tell him I sent you, right? So he's like, okay. So it turns out there were 4 apparitions. So that was the first one. So just really quickly, I just want to go through these apparitions. The second apparition, first he goes to Zumaraga, and he says, hey, but see, he doesn't have any power. But he goes to the bishop and he says, well, basically I ran into, the goddess, on Tepeyac Hill, and she needs a house. And the bishop says, well, whatever. He sends him out. He won't even let him in for hours. That's the story. He finally lets him in, and then, this is not going to fly. And so he goes back, and he says, and she appears again. And he begs her to send somebody with more social standing, somebody who's got more power. He can't. The bishop doesn't even want to talk to him, basically. And so she says, okay, well, the bishop says, I need proof. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. So he says, I need you're going to have to give me something more on this. So he goes back and he says, please send somebody else. And she says, no, Juanito, Dieguito, mijo, you're the one. Do you see, I picked you. You don't argue with, if you're chosen, you have to do it. You got to do it. And so he says, well, she says, you come back here tomorrow and we'll work it out, and he says, well, okay. So then the next time comes, and she says, so he goes back, he goes back and speaks to the bishop, and he tells him, well, I'm going to bring you proof, wait and see. And the bishop says, yeah, okay, all right, okay, whatever, you come back when you have proof. And he says, okay. So now he's going to go back. He goes back and speaks to her again, and she says, okay, you come back tomorrow. Okay, so this negotiation's going on. Then the next day, he's supposed to go back. That's going to be where he gets the proof. But his uncle is deathly ill. So he's really, really sick. I guess everybody's named Juan, because in fact, Zumárrago, his name was Juan too. They're all named Juan. Anyway, Juan Bernardino was really sick. He was on his deathbed. And so Juan Diego got detained, and he couldn't get back there. And so he was like running past the hill because he was trying to find somebody who could help. Now I want to tell you there are two stories about this. One is he was on his deathbed from an illness that crept in. Another story, not widely spread around or known, is that he was on his deathbed because he'd been shot through by an arrow by his own people who were angry with him for colluding with the Spaniards. And so they shot him. You can choose your tale here. But he's sick. And so he needs help. So Juan Diego basically goes running past the hill, and she's like, wait, Juanito, wait, today is the day of our deal, And he's like, no, I can't, my uncle, he's like dying. I got to do something. And she's like, no, you don't, Juanito. So this is a big part of the story. You don't have to do anything. I've already taken care of it. Your uncle's fine. You'll see. There's nothing wrong with your uncle. Now you need to do what I'm asking you to do. I am she of unlimited healing. You ask and you will receive. Just like that. This is unlimited. Okay, so he's like, well, okay, so what do you want me to do? And she says, okay, what we're going to do is you're going to go up the hill to the top of the hill, and there you are going to find a garden. Okay, now it's winter time, and it's colder in Mexico than you think. In fact, it's really it's high. It's very high. Okay. So the way that I heard the story when I lived there was, it was snowing, and roses were growing in the snow. That's not the official story, though. The official story, this is from the Catholic Church, says that Juan, she tells him, you go up the hill and you're going to find flowers blooming out of frozen ground. And he's like, well, that's impossible. And she says, not with me. Everything is possible. And so you're going to find flowers. And these flowers, you will see they are going to do the trick because they're going to be special. Okay, so next thing that happens is he goes up the hill and finds this glorious garden. And he starts picking the flowers, and they're all different kinds of flowers. But some of the flowers are roses, and some of the flowers appear to be Castilian roses, which those are the flowers from the home of Zumárraga. Turns out Cortez was also from the same place. Okay, turns out that their church that they had both worshipped in Spain was in Guadalupe, Wolf River, it was called, had a few different names, where there had been an apparition of Our Lady, and so they called that apparition Our Lady of Guadalupe. So we will return to that in a minute, okay? So now, she who will become Our Lady of Guadalupe, who I'm calling Tonantzin de Guadalupe, she who will become Our Lady of Guadalupe, he picks the flowers, and she tells him to put the flowers in his tilma. Okay, so the tilma is this, what he was wearing was kind of a fold-over blanket with a hole in the middle, like for your neck, right? And so he could put the flowers in the blanket and hold it like an apron, right? So he starts picking them up and putting the flowers in, and he's going to take those flowers to the bishop. But then this is a big part of the story, kneels before him, and she arranges the flowers in his tilma, in the inside. And so then he's going to have to get all the way, that's the fourth apparition. And so that's the fourth time she appears, and now this date is December 12th, 1531. Okay, so she tells him, go to the bishop, take the flowers, and as soon as the bishop sees the flowers, everything will fall into place. It's all done. So he goes to the bishop. He's having trouble carrying all these flowers, but he gets there, and he drops the flowers. The flowers pour out, and on his tilma is the perfect image, like it's painted, of the apparition, made out of the dyes, you might say, of all the flowers. And so the apparition is right there on his tilma. So that's the miracle. And they're like, oh, guess it's true. And so here is where, so then they immediately will do it. Okay, we'll do it. Okay, so now I have to talk about the name for a second, because they're questioning and they're saying, who did you see? What was happening? What did she say? Give us the details. They want everything, right? All of the information, all of the details, because they can't believe the image that they're seeing. And this is me again, okay, my fantasy. So he says to them, on the hill of Tonantzin, and they say, well, and he says, Tonantzin, so none of this is recorded. I'm making this up. And then they say, well, and he says, so I'm quoting Juan Diego, but I'm making this up. Okay, so I'm not really quoting Juan Diego. I'm quoting myself. I'm hearing Juan Diego saying, como Guadalupe. Como means like, Guadalupe. Because in Nahuatl, they don't even have the sounds G or D, like Guadalupe. They don't have those sounds. But Guadalupe is the virgin goddess, and she gets mixed up with Tonantzin. They have all the same qualities. Both of them were considered to be, and maybe one was Aztec and maybe one was not or Toltec, so, but they were virgin goddesses. They gave birth to all the gods. They gave birth to Quetzalcoatl, the big god, impregnated by emeralds. Okay, so that's the story. So I'm hearing Juan Diego saying, like Guadalupe, and I'm hearing them say, what did you just say? And he says, Guadalupe. And they're like, Guadalupe. And he's saying, Guadalupe. And they're saying, Guadalupe. And so it was like the deal was done. It was like Guadalupe, that was from their hometown, and she was the Black Madonna of the royal monastery of Santa Maria de Guadalupe. Santa Maria de Guadalupe from Spain. Okay, now check this out. Good thing you asked me, Merritt, how long I was going to be talking. Good thing we took a break, because I'm still not done yet. Okay,
no, it's a long story.
It is a long story, way longer than I thought. Okay, so check this out, you guys. This is I'm going to show you a picture. Oh, here we go. This is what they were used to. This is Our Lady Maria de Guadalupe in Spain, okay? And that monastery, now, I don't want to tell a big story about that place now, because obviously I'm embellishing the story and telling a lot, but I will just tell you that that monastery was built on the site where someone found a statue of the Black Madonna. I'm not even going to go into the Black Madonna and Isis right now. It'd be way too much, okay? But there is a connection. Okay, so somebody had found the Black Madonna on the river. They built the monastery to her, and then here was the apparition. And so I'll pass it around, and you can see it's the Black Madonna. So they already had a context, a major context. They already knew who Our Lady of Guadalupe was. They didn't have to guess who Our Lady of Guadalupe was. Okay, so all of the symbolism was there. She was garlanded with flowers. Everything that they already understood was there. And it turns out that the symbolism, both from the Nahuatl-based culture, the Toltec culture, the Aztec culture, the sacred symbols were the same ones that they had. Flowers, song, beautiful colors, the sacred event, miracles, the petition, asking and receiving. So it was all the same. It was all the same. So in the Guadalupe / Tonantzin, she was the goddess of midwifery, of children, of babies. She was the one that all the women went through, behold, the great woman, she has captured a soul. This is the power. This is empowerment, not disempowerment. It was empowerment in the culture, the pregnancy, and the bringing forth a child. That was not considered a source of disempowerment. It was considered to be a source of empowerment. Okay. There were very special symbols appearing on the tilma, that's the picture under the flowers, right? And you could see that there were drawings of certain kinds of flowers. That the jasmine flower was the predominant flower that appeared directly over her womb. It was a round circle in the middle with the 4 directions on the outside, going on the outside. Okay, so it's a round circle with 4 directions, and everybody in the Aztec, Toltec, world understood that. That was part of their culture. It was part of their background. So there was one of those very prominent. There were 8 petaled flowers. Okay, and so the 8-petaled flowers would be standing for the 4 directions, and then between those 4 directions, the 4 directions: fire, water, air, and earth. Right? That's shamanic the world over, and so then the 8 is the next manifestation of that. And then in addition, they saw they look like vines, but they're in the Nahuatl language, they represented rivers, and migrational paths, and they had flowers on them. And so this was all done when the church got the drawing together. It was all drawn in gold. So it had all the flowers and everything, but then there's beautiful golden lines on it with these depictions. And so this was something that both cultures could really, really relate to. All right. So, and also she was pregnant. So it was a virgin birth. And that was a big part of it too. So the gold, the flowers, the rainbow, the mantle of heaven. She had stars all over her mantle that she was wearing. It was all the cosmos, and then her tunic underneath, and inside was all the earth. So it was the bringing together of heaven and earth, and all of that. And Tonantzin also had been honored at the winter solstice festival. And so there were a lot of symbols connected with Tonantzin too that just spilled right into Our Lady of Guadalupe. She was called Morena, the dark one, or Morenita, And so this was, even though she wasn't called a Black Madonna, it related directly. That means dark one. Did I say that already? Okay, and so that, even though she wasn't called the Black Madonna, it related directly to Spain, absolutely directly to Spain, to what these people had experienced. So the symbolism of the apparition was absolutely perfect. So then what they did, so now I'll see if I can collapse the story a little bit. So the next thing that they did was, this was it. So what they did, because this is how they communicated, they had, that area of the world has always been, the tradition says, filled with artists. So like the art is just huge. And so what they did was they painted the apparition, they got the basic picture of the apparition, and then they painted it over and over. They painted like hundreds of copies of the apparition, and they also painted pictures of Juan Diego kneeling before the apparition, him dumping the flowers out of his tilma, the picture on the tilma, so that everybody could get it through pictures. So this has nothing to do with the Bible, you understand? It has nothing to do with any of that. This has to do with something else. And all of the talk about it is going to be through symbols and pictures. So they paint the pictures, something like this, and then they send the pictures out with runners, everywhere. And then everybody's copying the pictures. And so then what happens, next thing that happens, is the people start to come because they want to see the apparition. They already are familiar with apparitions. They've already sought Tonantzin for 1,000 years, for healing, for cures, for midwifery, for everything. So they already know this as part of their culture. So now they start to come by the thousands, by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands. And in 3 years, the next 3 years, they baptize 9 million people. Some days they are baptizing 20,000 people. That's how many people came. It's a myth that there weren't a lot of people around. There were a lot of people around, and they came and they saw, So, okay, I'm going to just cut back to myself a little bit. So I lived in Cholula, city sacred to Tonantzin, and others as well. Plus, Cholula is the sacred city of Mexico, and every single day is a feast day. So every day there's music in the streets. They say 365 temples in Cholula, but one of the most elaborate ones is to Tonantzin. And so this was part of my recent awakening, because after I was at the wall and looking at Our Lady of Guadalupe at the wall just now, in October, this was another dream I had. I went to sleep, and I wasn't connecting, with my life in Mexico. But I went to sleep, and I woke up and I wasn't connecting Our Lady of Guadalupe with Tonantzin at all. And I woke up with Tonantzitla, like this, Tonantzitla, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I'm like, what is this? Tonantzitla. So I go online, Tonantzitla, nothing, zero, nothing. So I'm like, something. I know it's something. And so this is just now. This is in October, and end of October. I suddenly made the connection. Oh my gosh, I'm saying it wrong. I'm spelling it wrong. It's Tonantzin. It's Z-I-N. See, I was spelling it Tonancitla, Tonantzitla, because that's how it sounded to me. I never saw the spelling of it. That's from when I lived there, Tonantzitla. And it's Tonantzintla, and you have to get it right. Tonanzin. That's the name of the goddess. Okay, so where I lived, right around the corner from me, is this is the Church of Tonantzintla. And this is what the altar looks like. Black Madonna right at the core of it. this is another rendition or version of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And now she is called Tonantzin, and there's a major church to her in Cholula. And so I'm like, oh my God, it's all one. So that church was built in Cholula after they covered, this is a different church, not the one on top of the pyramid, but that's connected too. This one's right in the town square, like right there. And so I pass that church every single day. So just another note about my own experience was that when I went to so on that Tepeyac Hill, so now there's a huge church there. There are 6 churches there on top of this hill. It's a big hill. It's not a small hill. So I went there in 1971, and the big shrine, the big church, it wasn't a shrine, the gigantic church to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Oh, they have the tilma still, right? It's framed. It's behind glass. The glass is like, it's like really thick. And now it's bulletproof because of some stuff that happened. Well, there are always stories. Somebody placed a bouquet of flowers, under the image, and of course, all these stories. There's a bomb inside, and it blew up everything in the church, but not the tilma and not Our Lady of Guadalupe. But after that, they protected her even more. But so one of the stories is that the painting never fades. It never changes. It never fades. It's there. It's still there. But what got me back then, because I was more interested in the cultural ramifications than in the apparition itself. If I went there today, the apparition is what it would interest me. But this is prior to the whole women's spirituality movement. This is me just waking up. We're talking about 1971, 1972. Then, I'd be primed, of course, for the women's spirituality movement breaking out in 1979. It's like, oh yeah, because I also had some high school awakenings from some very cool teachers. That was back in the 60s, but that was only the merest beginning. Okay, so what blew me away, and you will still see this, so that church that they built, first they built a little shrine, then they built a giant church. So this church became a pilgrimage site now for people from all over the world. So when people go there, what I wanted to tell you, when I was there in 71, 72, the church was sinking because Mexico City was all built on top of water tables and lakes and stuff like that. So the church was actually sinking, and they were really concerned because it was like completely crooked and it was going into the ground, and they were really worried about what was going to happen and what was going to happen with Our Lady of Guadalupe. The image, the painting is called Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's like it's synonymous, with the actual apparition, because the painting is what moves people. It is the painting. And that they look at the painting, and then the painting isn't just any painting, it's a miracle. So you're looking at a miracle, and she speaks through the painting, she comes to you through the painting. So anyway, the first thing that blew me away was there was the big debate about what they were going to do about it sinking, but also that the people were coming for miles on their knees, crawling. And now it's not like the country like it was, 500 years ago. It's a city. It's Mexico City. And people are on these dirty, dirty streets, and they're going on their knees, and they're bringing their offerings, and they have cardboard, like a piece of cardboard, like a box top or something like that, and moving it forward, knee after knee, like crawling, like moving knee after knee, moving the cardboard for miles. Or the whole family, the mother will be the one, usually it's a mom, I notice it's mostly the women who are walking like that, and then on their knees, and the children will be gathered around helping them move the cardboard. They're seeking a miracle, something. Maybe somebody's sick, maybe somebody needs help. So that's what really blew me away. And then when I went back, by the time I got back later, Okay, I can almost end my story, you guys. Okay, so now it's 1979, January 1979. I go back to Tepeyac Hill to see Our Lady of Guadalupe. I went to Mass. Now they got a new church. They built a new church. So now there are 6 churches there. So they moved the tilma into this new church, this kind of modernistic church. Anyway, I went to Mass in the new church, and there, hundreds of thousands of people. It's impossible to explain how many people are trying to go there, get in, see this, experience this. It's magical. So I was staying at the Maria Teresa Hotel on the Avenue Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City. And that, if you guys have been there, Maria Isabella it's called. Okay, and there's like a roundabout in front of the hotel, and then there's a huge tall statue right in front of the hotel. And on top of the statue is Diana, the Roman goddess. She's the huntress. She's also the goddess of childbirth. And there's a connection because she is like Tonantzin. She's the goddess of birth and all this, and like Our Lady of Guadalupe. So I go to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and and I'm praying and whatnot, and I go back to that hotel, and that day I conceived a child, my daughter, my first baby, under the auspices of both are these 2 amazing apparitions of women of the divine feminine, Our Lady of Guadalupe / Tonantzin / Guadalupe, and Diana, the huntress, with all of her many names, by all of her many names. Okay, now I'm going to come to an end. And I'm going to say the migration continues, though there is more to this story. My grandmother was born on December 12th. That's the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And my grandmother also was my initiator in love. And I'm not going to go into that story right now because this story's got way longer than I was ever thinking it was going to be. But I want to go back to the migration, and I want to end on the migration. And I want to end with the wall. I started with the wall, and I want to end with the wall. So these cultures continue to blend. They also now continue to blend, hide, and preserve. So a lot of this energy and these apparitions and things continue, and they have been going on probably since the beginning of our species in many ways, and they are continuing. But there are official stories and non-official stories. The North American continent has been a place of continuous flow, and it remains a place of continuous flow. The migration continues, and I want to end with a statement about the wall. The wall blocks the movement and migration of humans and other wildlife that have migrated up and down North America and South America forever, following the flow of life. I witnessed Guadalupe on both sides of the wall doing what? Giving hope, giving solace, giving healing, giving love, because that is her promise. That is her eternal promise. And that's why she has become the patroness of Mexico. Do you know when the Mexicans fought the Spanish later in the Civil War, who was on their flag? Guess. Any answers?
Our Lady?
It was Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was exactly like Liberty, and I won't go there either, was the battle cry of the Statue of Liberty, who was the goddess Fortuna in the beginning, from Italy. I'm not going to go there either, but the only power strong enough to draw the people together is going to be the divine feminine. And Our Lady of Guadalupe was the power that drew Mexico together. And remember, when Mexico, during that time, the boundary then would have been that Mexico would have come all the way up in California, way up in California, and all of those states that I mentioned earlier, the southern states, that was all part of Mexico. And then later there was the pushback from the United States. And then, also the battles that took place and reclaimed that land. I almost want to go into that, but I'm not going to. There are big stories about Pancho Villa, there are big stories about Geronimo, and all the stuff that was happening along the border and what was behind it, and really, really great stories. But here's what I want to end with, that I personally have experienced her, Our Lady of Guadalupe, as I'll call her an entity because a vision, but I want to say it's not just a vision, it's like an entity with the power to unite, the power ultimately to create mystic doorways in places where there are no doors. Okay, so by believing and by drawing together the power of receptivity, I'm just using the wall as an example, but that is how we make the holes through the walls. And it has to do with our power of belief. Why? Because she has the power to inspire love. Love is the opening. Love is the only thing that is going to open that which is shut. Not the most intense kind of power in the world is capable of overcoming the power of love. Love is the biggest power in the world. This is the power to welcome the stranger, the power to elicit compassion. And I can hear her crying out in my consciousness right now, take down the wall. Open your hearts to love. Take down the wall. And then in the end, I found out, because I'm still doing research on this, and she started talking to me. She's been talking to me. Do you know, she asks, that even though the sandhill cranes and the Canada geese and the little songbirds fly over the wall in their annual migration, there are many species, many birds, and many butterflies that cannot fly over the wall? Let the butterfly then, she said to me, let the butterfly then be your battle cry. Listen, she's talking to me. On December 4th, 2019, that was last week, a private group in Texas called We Build the Wall had raised $25 million to create its own private barriers. A judge stopped their progress. Why? The National Butterfly Center issued a restraining order, and it worked. Do you see? The butterflies cannot fly over the wall. So if we start tuning in, tapping in to some of these, because butterfly, there were butterflies in the apparition too, in that garden, in the rose garden. And those butterflies represent the power of soul and the movement of soul, and even the movement of soul between worlds. That's an international symbol, the butterflies. Okay, so this butterfly center has stopped the movement of the wall. And then I'm going to quote the president of the North American Butterfly Association. Of course, this is not connected with Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now we're talking butterflies. He says, the incredible biodiversity found here at the site of the wall, supported and enhanced by 17 years of labor and millions of dollars of investment in our butterfly sanctuary, is integral to the health of a fragile but vibrant ecosystem and warrants protection against the unlawful incursion of the wall. This is in Mission, Texas. I thought it was interesting too that he's talking about 17 years of really hard work to create this butterfly sanctuary, and Juan Diego was 17 years after the decimation of Cortez and bringing alive this new way of knowing. Okay, so she says, look for the door, look for the way, unite the worlds with love, open the door, liberate the butterflies. You have the power to free your soul. You have the power to free the souls of your people. Love is the way. So says the divine feminine, appearing in all her guises. And so says Our Lady of Guadalupe, who lives on both sides of the wall. Let love open the door. Let the butterflies go free. You must not stop the pollination, which is vital to the health of your planet, which is an integral part of universal harmony. And there it comes to an end.